stand by for action.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. In part one of my special Vagi-Nation, I began talking about how the Me Too movement is being used in the effort to disappear men in the culture and power structure of the United States of America. And if you want to catch any of that, go back and listen to my October 13th, 2018 show, Vagi-Nation Part 1. And do note that I'll be including source links for this program on social media. I'm available at UBG Contact on Twitter, and I'm Dave Milner on Facebook, the Tea Party Community in MeWe, and Amagador on Gab. Now to start part 2, I want to get into more of the hypocrisy of the Me Too movement. And then I'll point out more ways that men are being disappeared from our society, and come to a few conclusions. Let's begin, though, with Congressman Keith Ellison, Democratic Party big bug, prominent Muslim, and man being accused of physical and emotional abuse. Much of the argument as to whether or not the Me Too movement and indeed its leftist backers have a double standard when it comes to men on the left and men on the right can be heard in this segment off of a story published by Caitlin Schallhorn of Fox News on September the 12th, 2018.
Here's a question. Do Democrats have a double standard when it comes to the Me Too movement? The woman accusing Democratic Congressman Keith Ellison of domestic abuse thinks so, and she wants to know why she's being smeared while Judge Brett Kavanaugh's accuser, to some, is being celebrated. And joining me now to debate is RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany and former Democratic Senate Majority Leader in Ohio, Capri Cafaro. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Morning. Thanks,
just
Julian.
to give a little background to this story, let's go right to this tweet here so we can see the actual response. And this was responding to a tweet that asked, quote, Democrats say they believe women. Do they believe you? Karen Monahan says, quote, no, they don't. I've been smeared, threatened, isolated from my own party. I provided medical records from 2017 stating on 2 different doctor visits I told them about the abuse and who did it. My therapist released records stating I have been dealing and healing from the abuse.
Now these things move pretty fast, so I'm pointing out things as it goes along, as I normally do. Firstly, note the laundry list of proof that is provided by Ms. Monahan, and contrast that with the profound lack of proof which was offered by Christine Blasey Ford against Judge Kavanaugh. Going forward, that is a very important thing to note. Let's continue.
So, Capri, I'll go to you. What do
Sure.
you make about that? Is there a double standard?
I think actually the bigger and more important question for me as a Democrat is, do we have a double standard within our own party because Keith Ellison is part of the leadership of the Democratic National Committee? We saw earlier this year Al Franken be pushed out of the Senate. We saw John Conyers from Michigan also pushed out because of allegations of sexual assault and misconduct. There's certainly Democrats have stood up, and not only have they stood up in the context of maybe the more political arena of saying, enough is enough and pushing people out, but also, obviously authoring the Violence Against Women Act, making sure that that VAWA was reauthorized in 2015, which is more important than some of this political rhetoric. But
Now this would completely explode my argument concerning the hypocrisy of the Me Too movement and the double standard of leftists when it comes to these sorts of things. Except some details were rather cleverly left out. Such as, in the case of Al Franken and Company, there weren't massive Soros and other left-wing millionaire-billionaire-backed protests. People weren't harassed in restaurants. There weren't calls for the deaths of men. That's what happened with then Judge Kavanaugh. So, while the woman's statements are factually true, as so often happens with the mind manipulators of the left, key elements were left out, so they can hardly take the moral high ground. Let's move on.
For me, my question is, why is Keith Ellison getting a pass and other Democrats have not? And is that because of his stature within my party?
There is no mystery here. The big stinky gorilla in the room is that not only are the accusations against Mr. Ellison being swept under the rug because he's a high-toned powerhouse in the Democratic Party, but also because he is a Muslim. Democrats have defended Islam, and they have ignored or tried to explain away the excesses of Mohammedans ever since they realized that they could use the fast-growing Muslim population in the United States of America to gain more votes. Islamic teachings concerning the abuse of women are laid down in the Quran, the Hadiths, and the Sirahs. So, if Mr. Ellison is guilty of these things, as a Muslim, he considered it only his due. This element, however, is being ignored by Democrats, who are pretending that there is some kind of large mystery involved as to why Mr. Ellison is being treated differently. So let's keep going.
So is that worrisome then for you, Capri? It sounds like it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, every single victim needs to be listened to. And
But wait. Isn't it, we believe all survivors? Isn't that what was screamed at Senator Ted Cruz and his wife when they were at a restaurant just trying to eat their dinner? Isn't that what was yelled on the streets by the leftist rent-a-mobs? See, it's one thing for a representative of the left to go on television and say that all accusers should be listened to. There's a vast difference, though, between that and an automatic assumption that all accusers are telling the truth, even when the accusers cannot provide any proof of their accusations. But let's move on.
And every every person who's been accused, those individuals, it doesn't matter who they are and what position they have, nobody is above the law and nobody is above being held accountable.
They might be listening to this and thinking, wow, that is a reasoned response. That makes me want to vote for Democrats because they're being represented by this type of person. Well, there's only one problem. When the rubber meets the road, when senators and representatives are in the halls of Congress, when ordinary people are walking on the street, when Trump administration officials are trying just to go out and have a nice dinner, the real left comes out. The left who want to disrupt people's lives, destroy property, and commit violence. And yes, I will get into some of that later on in this show. But just remember that what you're hearing from this representative of the Democrats is only the candy coating of the poisoned pill. And let's continue.
Kayleigh, I'm going to, go out on a limb here and say you probably agree with what you're hearing.
Undoubtedly, and I really applaud Capri for asking the question of whether Keith Ellison's stature is essentially shielding him from being targeted and serious questions being asked about those domestic violence allegations, especially in light of the fact that there's ample evidence against Keith Ellison. There are text messages. The accuser told 4 individuals contemporaneously about what happened to her, the medical records. And I would add to this also not just Keith Ellison, but there are accusations against Sherrod Brown of domestic abuse. He's a senator in Ohio, a Democrat as well. His accuser got a restraining order in a court of law and made the accusation in a court of law. So there are 2 examples Democrats are ignoring.
I'm sorry, I cannot let the Sherrod Brown thing go, just simply because this is an issue that has come up time and time and time again, and this goes back to his divorce records in the 1980s, and his ex-wife has come out basically saying that a lot of unfortunate things have been said, et cetera, et cetera. Connie Schultz, his current wife, along with his former wife, have a united front on this. So yes, bad things obviously were said in the 1980s in the midst of a messy divorce, but these 2 things I don't think should be conflated, and that situation has been entirely litigated politically and otherwise in the state of Ohio.
Whoa yourself, though. Divorce records in the 1980s? And now we're supposed to ignore all of that? That's in the past. That's been taken care of. Nothing to see here, Officer Barbrady? Then Judge Kavanaugh, during the confirmation hearings, was hammered about all sorts of things that happened in the 1980s. That was hardly considered irrelevant at the time. The impression was that the time that incidents took place had no relevance on consideration of Judge Kavanaugh's fitness to sit on the Supreme Court. But again, you see the double standard here. Suddenly, time does have a relevance when it comes to a Democrat. You see, this representative is very slick in her rhetoric, but she can't hide the true nature of the left when it comes not only to the Me Too movement, but the double standard that is applied to men on the left and men on the right. Now to part of an episode by Tucker Carlson of Fox News. And mind you, folks, I'm not one of these people that watches Fox News 24/7. I just happened to use these clips as part of my research for this special. And I haven't agreed with Tucker Carlson 100% of the time. That's been another show. But I found the following discussion that he had with an author whose political stance and social philosophy many might disagree with quite fascinating, and I wanted to pass it on to you guys because it shows that even some on the left are beginning to have a problem with the specter of a United States of America where men in any kind of a positive role are disappeared. Give a listen.
Well, just recently, Hillary Clinton said that Brett Kavanaugh could not be allowed on the Supreme Court. We had to believe his accusers, she said, even without evidence. But Clinton turns out to be one of the most self-aware politicians in this country. That's a high bar.
I would personally say self-centered, but let's not quibble. And move on.
So it wasn't too surprising that on Sunday she backtracked from this position. She told CBS that her own husband had no obligation to resign over the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Some today have said he should have stepped down.
In retrospect, do you think Bill should have resigned in the wake of the Monica Lewinsky scandal?
Absolutely not.
It wasn't an abuse of power?
No.
There are people who look at the incidents of the 90s and they say a president of the United States cannot have a consensual relationship with an intern. The power imbalance is too great.
Who was an adult. But let me ask you this. Where's the investigation of the current incumbent?
Well, even the ladies of The View are not buying this line of argument. Instead, they ripped Hillary Clinton, believe it or not, for her evasive interview tactics. Here's a selection.
What she just did is exactly what the Republicans do.
Right.
They changed the subject.
When do conservatives, in an honest discussion of the issues, change the subject? We go right for the point. The only thing the harpies of The View don't like is the fact that it's very obvious that Hillary Clinton was caught red-handed using that moldy oldie tactic for the entire world to see. Now let's listen to some more of this.
So that's why we never get anywhere in the discourse.
Mm-hmm. So, you know you have a bad argument when your immediate response is, well, they were worse. Call it out for being wrong and for being bad for all those years. I just don't think she can have it both ways.
Nina Frederick claims that Hillary tried to intimidate her into silence. Kathleen Wiley claims the Clintons tried to intimidate her into not telling the truth. She called Monica Lewinsky a narcissistic Looney Tune. Jennifer Flowers, some failed cabaret singer. Democrats have got to move on from the Clintons.
The trouble is, though, that they can't. See, guys, the left creates monsters, and they enrich them not only with money, but with power. The Clintons were very useful to the left for decades. But now, the culture warriors of the left on The View and in other places are beginning to say that now it's beginning to be time for the Clintons to step aside. Trouble is, that's not possible when you've created multimillionaires who are still a power in the predominant leftist party of the United States of America. If you want an example, Whether it's welcomed or not, the Clintons are about to go on a multi-state speaking tour before the midterm elections of 2018. And yes, unlike Trump rallies, they'll be charging admission to get in and listen to their pearls of wisdom. But now let's move on to this person that Carlson was interviewing, whose views you might not necessarily agree with, but who has a slant on the entire issue that I've been talking about that I think you need to hear.
Camille Paglia is an author, one of the country's best-known cultural critics. She has written extensively about Hillary Clinton for more than 20 years, among many other topics. Her latest book is titled Provocations, and Camille Paglia joins us today. We're honored to have you. Thank you very much for coming on. So,
thank you, Tucker.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton is mentioned actually quite a bit in this book.
Yes.
Before I ask you broader questions about what's happening in this country, what's your reaction to her role in the kind of Me Too movement of right now?
Well, it's very ambiguous. I think that her history has been hypocritical. I was the only Democrat feminist to call for Bill Clinton's resignation, and I had voted for him twice and don't regret it.
Now here's where this author loses credibility a little bit. When you take a moral position, you have to follow through with it, or it's not real. But too many people on the left are too willing to ignore their moral compass in order to advance the causes of the left. Most of them do it because they feel that the overall goals of the left, feed the hungry, house the homeless, and heal the sick. Those are the basics, they think. And the left, they think, can do that the best way. So they're willing to overlook other issues, including moral issues, to put and keep the left in power. Now that doesn't negate what this woman has to say about the Clintons, the Me Too movement, or anything else. But it is an example of how even the best and best-intentioned people on the left are willing to compromise their moral base for their political one. Now let's hear some more.
But it was a scandal, the squalor that he introduced into the people's house. All this was happening, the servicing of him by an intern in the White House offices.
Yes. No, it's a very good point and a good reminder. So what, as someone who's written about sex and gender roles and our society for so long, for many decades, what do you make of the convulsion we're going through, particularly of the Me Too movement?
Well, it's great that attention is being paid to the women being abused. In 1986, I was lobbying for moderate sexual harassment guidelines at my university in Philadelphia. But I think we've gone a bit too far here. I think that fundamental civil rights involving the presumption of innocence have to be considered. So what I espouse as a feminist is that women themselves must take charge of their own interactions with men. They must signal at the time that something is unacceptable. This waiting 10 years, 20 years, 30 years this is not only not American, it's Stalinist.
But women, we're told again and again by people who claim to empower women, are themselves powerless and they can't say anything because they're so lacking in power.
Nonsense.
Okay.
No, working class women, yes, may be so dependent upon a job that they cannot protest.
I'm not so sure this is true anymore. Now, in the 1980s, she might have well had a point here. But this is the age of social media and instant communication. If you want to make your boss look bad, you can do it and the entire planet can see it. It's not quite the way it used to be when it was 100% he said, she said. So while I'll agree that women on low-income jobs might have a few more problems, they have access now not only to technologies, but to an entire community of other women and men who are willing to step up, stand with them, and help them to stop some of the harassment. It's not true in 100% of cases, but times do change, and we need to continue.
But there, as I have written, there's no excuse for well-educated, upper-middle-class professional women to let offenses to their dignity go by. You must draw the line when it happens. It's absurd that you feel too powerless. You can't complain. These people, women who say that, are simply putting the career advantage over the larger question of feminist issues and the protection of women.
You've written so much about, I mean, just be blunt, about sex for all these years. What do you make of seeing your, I guess, former allies on the left strike an almost evangelical or Puritan position on these questions, a kind of blue nose outrage at sensual pleasure, at personal happiness, telling you that, you know, you're not allowed to do this or do that? I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, there has been a split within feminism since second-wave feminism was born in the late 1960s. The media have been extremely lazy in not pursuing this. I belong to the pro-sex, pro-pop culture wing of feminism. I favor the legalization of prostitution. I have defended pornography. I admire strip clubs, et cetera, et cetera. So there has been this argument for a very long time. My branch won in the 90s thanks to Madonna suddenly bursting on the scene. But Madonna has faded and lost all sense of her own trajectory. And I am astonished, after the victory of the pro-sex wing, that we're back to feminist puritanism again of the Andrea Dworkin kind. We're talking about mental imbalance. We're talking about hysteria that has nothing whatever to do with women's rights. These are neurotics, okay, who are talking about hatred of men, who are poisoning the culture, making it more difficult for young women to reconcile with young men.
Now, what you heard during that author's excellent assessment of the current Me Too movement and current feminism was me opening up several supporting documents for this program. When I thought to do this show, I did not want to come to it without thorough research, which is the way I do most of what I do. And I'm wondering why the Me Too movement has not condemned the following individual. This is taken from an article at a place called Spencer Fernando on October the 6th, 2018. And yes, this article is sourced out. The title of this one is Jordan Hunt Arrested, Charged with 8 counts of assault. Hunt was identified as the, quote, man, end quote, who roundhouse kicked a pro-life woman. That might be a clue right there as to why the Me Too movement hasn't spoken up. Jordan Hunt, the quote-unquote man, identified as a person on a video kicking pro-life woman Marie-Claire Bissonnette, has turned himself in to Toronto police and been arrested. According to the Toronto Sun, he faces 8 counts of assault and 7 counts of mischief under $5,000 relating to the Life Choice demonstration last Sunday afternoon at Keele and Bloor Streets. Additionally, Hunt has been charged with a count of assault from an incident that allegedly took place on August the 2nd, 2018. In that case, police say a group of anti-abortionists were protesting around noon near Dufferin and Dundas Streets when they were approached by a man on a bike who tried to grab one of their signs and then pushed a woman into a pole before fleeing the scene. Once the original incident came to light, Hunt was quickly fired by Noble Studio 101, a hair salon. And by the way, the video showing Hunt kicking the woman is in the article, which I will provide on social media. But the story doesn't end there. Hunt, a man who roundhouse kicked a woman, in the video, Hunt claims that he was trying to kick the woman's phone, as if destruction of private property is some kind of an excuse. What he should have done, had he been a real man, was to stay around, apologize profusely, take his medicine, and move on. But instead, he's opened up a GoFundMe page with a goal of $100,000. Now, I don't know how much he's gotten so far, or if the GoFundMe page is even still up. However, this is what he had to say. I was fighting the fash, and I bashed one good. The alt-right doxed me and forced me to go into hiding. They cost me my beloved job as a hairstylist, and I'm shacked up in a cheap motel. I shouldn't have to live like this just for standing up for my beliefs. Vive la resistance! I'm being victimized in the comments and need a safe space. What a shame Hunt didn't remember that when people he disagreed with were peacefully marching in Toronto. This is a classic example of the new hard thug left, supported by Hollywood, supported by the entertainment industry, supported by leftist millionaires and billionaires, and being excused by people like Maxine Waters and, yes, Hillary Clinton. But my question to the Me Too movement is, where are you? Why was that anti-abortion protesters' well-being worth less today than was the well-being of a leftist who was trying to bring down an original intent Supreme Court nominee from an incident that happened over 30 years ago? Where is your outrage? As I've said, the Me Too movement is supposed to be international. So let me ask you, why has there been no protest on the decision of the French government, which is covered in this article by Abdelhamid Kadour from The Voice of Europe, published October the 13th, 2018. The headline on this one: listen carefully, ladies. French hero who sacrificed himself to save a hostage from an Islamist won't have a place named after him as, quote, it may offend Muslims, end quote. French hero Arnaud Beltrame, who sacrificed himself to save a hostage from an Islamist terrorist, won't have a place named after him because it may upset Marseille's huge Muslim community, Valeurs Actuelles reports. Yes, guys, this one is sourced out too. On 24 March 2018, an ISIS terrorist stormed a supermarket in Trèbes, armed with a handgun, a hunting knife, and 3 homemade bombs. He shot 2 people dead and took others hostage. During the negotiation with the police, the terrorist accepted Beltrame's offer to swap places with the last hostage. Now attend well, Me Too movement and ladies, a female cashier. Beltrame also set his phone on a table with its line open so that the police outside could monitor the activity inside. After a 3-hour standoff with the police, Radouane Lakdim, the 25-year-old terrorist, stabbed, even though rumors circulated that he had sliced Beltrame's throat, and murdered police officer Arnaud Beltrame. But apparently, paying tribute to Beltrame's sacrifice is seen as being potentially offensive by Marseille's leftist elected officials. Here's what Stéphane Ravier, 7th District National Rally Mayor, revealed during a town council with Marseille's elected officials. Leftist elected officials, socialist and communist, refused that a place in the 15th District be named after Arnaud Beltrame. In the first time, they've said, under fallacious pretext, that this place wasn't prestigious enough, before telling the truth in these terms. We on the field, we witnessed that the population has changed, and if we give the name of Arnaud Beltrame in this district, the population will take that as a provocation. Marseille's 15th district is similar to Marseille, a place with a huge community of immigrants from North Africa who practice a rigorous Islam. Marseille is not only a cesspool of crimes, but also of jihadists. Just on the 1st of October of last year, 2017, an illegal migrant from Tunisia shouted Allahu Akbar before stabbing and killing 2 women aged 20 and 21 years old, both cousins. By every measure, police officer Arnaud Beltrame was a man's man. I've spoken to law enforcement officers, both retired and active serving, since the incident, and they confirm Beltrame knew what was going to happen to him when he volunteered to spare the life of a woman and sacrifice his own. He was under no illusions. France has been under the sway of violent Mohammedans for several years now, so there was no pretense. And yet, Beltrame went and did what he had to do. But not one peep that I've heard from the Me Too movement, or from modern feminists, concerning the French government's craven decision not to name a place after this man, who gave his life for a woman. People, I will never ever tell women to quote-unquote get over it, who come forward and share stories of abuse. How could I? I was abused myself as a kid. Not sexually, but pretty much every other way. But neither am I going to stand by and see an effort which should have full legitimacy cheapen itself by becoming a political tool to be used against one side of the fundamental argument of statism versus individualism in the United States of America. It's my hope that proponents of the Me Too movement will come to recognize that their responsibility is far wider than that which they have adopted. But the Me Too movement is not the only problem when it comes to the effort to wipe men from the positive record of the United States of America. It is a part of a Nazi-like new feminism, which, as I stated in Part 1 of Vagi-Nation, is less about equality and more about payback. And the problem is that, like with Black Lives Matter, it's an effort for payback for things that aren't even owed. And it gets into matters like freedom of speech. The following is from an article published by Mardot Sipel of Variety on September the 27th, 2018. Headline: Fox News fires contributor who called Kavanaugh accusers, quote, lying skanks, end quote. Kevin Jackson, who has been terminated as a Fox News contributor following a series of tweets in which he referred to Supreme Court Justice nominee Brett Kavanaugh's accusers as, quote, lying skanks, end quote, as the Kavanaugh hearing played out Thursday. Kevin Jackson has been terminated as a contributor. His comments on today's hearings were reprehensible and do not reflect the value of Fox News, said a Fox News spokesperson. Jackson has been a contributor on Fox for several years, as well as a radio host on KJ Radio, and the author of the best-selling book, Race Pimping, the Multi-Trillion-Dollar Business of Liberalism. Feminists are their own worst enemies and enemy of women, Jackson wrote on Twitter Thursday morning. To hell with the notion that women must be believed no matter what. Lying skanks is what these two women are, and we all know more, he wrote. Following a thread criticizing his rhetoric, Jackson elaborated on the remark. It wasn't challenged because leftist women are skanky, for the most part. More will be sued and made to pay for their lies, he wrote. And I say without reservation that I agree with this. Remember Judge Roy Moore. And yes, there will be others, if the left think that they can get away with it. No, I am not saying that a quote-unquote loose woman can't be sexually assaulted, molested, raped, or otherwise. I am saying, though, that accusations alone cannot be taken as proof. Not in the United States of America, where we have due process. Let's hear more of the article. In a since deleted tweet from 11:02 Thursday morning, during Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's Senate testimony, Jackson continues to criticize Ford, writing, #Christine Blasey Ford, academic problems came from her promiscuity. Dang, girl, stop opening your legs and open a book. Here are some of Jackson's other tweets written during the Kavanaugh hearing. Democrats declared a war on men long ago. Kavanaugh farce is just one more proof of their derangement. Here's another one. I have 4 sons with whom I have to have the talk. Have 100% proof of whereabouts at all times. And another. Hey, Democrats, Kavanaugh is what a victim looks like. And another. Wow, can't remember who she spoke with about her allegations? I'll have to stop here, folks, and say I'm not sure why Fox News found that offensive, but let's hear a few more tweets. This nonsense stinks to low hell and has Democrat fingerprints all over it. And one more. Effing crooked Democrat scumbags object to nonsense. Again, this is one that I'm mystified that anyone finds offensive, unless it's the fact that they're being referred to as effing crooked. Now the real question here is, did Fox News have the right to fire Kevin Jackson? Particularly for statements that he made off of the job. And I know there are some jumping up and down now, screaming, of course they had the right to fire him, he made vile tweets. Well, it's not as simple as that. Depending on what his contract was, he was not contributing on Fox News on the television at the time. If he was on his own social media account, then he was speaking for himself. So it is not only unfair of Fox News to have fired him for statements that he made on his own time, but again, unless his contract called for otherwise, it was fascistic of them to do so. Now here's how I look at this, people. When I go to work for someone, I'm a company man. I will go on that job, and I will do the very best for that company that I can. They will have my full faithful services. But when I'm off the clock, I'm my own man. And no one on my job is going to tell me how to behave off of that job unless they are paying me or unless I am under contract to do otherwise. Now, I wouldn't make an issue out of this, except that it seems that people on the left can say whatever they want, and it can be as vile as it possibly can be, and there are no repercussions. They don't lose their place in whatever society they're in. They can just move on. But when it comes to people on the right, that's different. And for society to continue to work together, that has to stop. If you're going to create a set of standards, it must apply to everyone, or it is not a set of standards. It's bogus. And so are the people who apply it arbitrarily, depending on who they agree with or disagree with politically. And there's certainly more to this effort. I don't know if I want to call it a conspiracy, but it certainly feels that way. To shunt men off to the side and remove their respectability and their legitimacy in our society. In entertainment, you see it on TV and in movies. I already talked about this in part 1 of the special. Men in entertainment are rarely portrayed as responsible, level-headed human beings. They're either idiots of some variety that have to be corrected by women, or they're villains that have to be destroyed by women. If you want some examples, Try the Comedy Central program South Park, whose writers and producers used to have courage. Now they have characters like PC Principal, who is a man who pushes political correctness and is violent towards people who disagree with him. Then there's their new character, Strong Woman. This is a character who, at the slightest provocation, becomes thoroughly offended and begins to spout new wave feminist doggerel. Well, people, I'll tell you something. To me, that's not a strong woman. That's a disturbed nutbag. Strong women, to me, are women like my grandmother, who knew how to milk a cow, till a field, help her husband hitch up a team of mules if necessary, assist in vehicle repair, and at the same time raise 9 kids, 10 if you want to include me. That's a strong woman. The kind of woman who is capable of anything and tolerates no excuses. Holly Weird has tried to replace men with women in such notable movies as Ghostbusters, which was a complete flop, the new Halloween movie, which I find interesting because Jamie Lee Curtis was already in Halloween H2O, or as it was known on Mystery Science Theater, Halloween Water, where she cut Michael Myers' head off. So that story should have ended anyway, but it's back, with Jamie Lee Curtis wielding firearms and ready to kill Michael Myers once again. Not the helpless, screaming runaway woman in the original Halloween movie, but now a strong woman, ready to do the story again. I'll tell you this, guys, the original Halloween is a movie that still scares me, and thanks to a woman, I figured out why it does. This woman told me that the character of Michael Myers seemed too real. Not in the sense that he was unkillable and things like that, but in the depths of his psychopathy. And then, of course, there's the new Ocean's movie. You know, those movies where a bunch of people get together and do a big heist. This one's different because it has women. And then there's Star Wars. The Force Awakens is basically just telling the same Star Wars story again, only with the man as a screw-up, the man being Luke Skywalker, of course, and the new wonderful Jedi being a woman. And they've done worse than that. They've thrown away money-making opportunities written in many good, well-written books for the sake of political correctness. Part of the reason I think that Disney did throw these books out and say that they are no longer a part of Star Wars canon is because they feature not only strong women, but strong men as well. And as far as the whole canon question goes when it comes to Star Wars, if it was approved by George Lucas or an employee of his before Disney bought Star Wars, it's still canon, so Disney can bite me. But the books are so well written that I'm going to recommend them. And the shame is here, guys, that Disney could have made at least 10 movies out of all of these books, not just the series I'm going to mention, but other books as well that are approved by Lucas and Lucas employees. I'm talking multiple millions of dollars they could make. But they've thrown that out the window for the sake of political correctness and just to make sure that there are only positively portrayed women and negatively portrayed men. Now, the book series that I'm going to talk about here was a little bit borrowed from by Disney, though badly distorted in their first new Star Wars movie. It's the Legacy of the Force series. Now, this was written by 3 authors who not only write their own stuff, but write based on scenarios already created by others. Franchises like, Star Trek, or, in this case, Star Wars. Now, these writers are Aaron Alston, Karen Traviss, and Troy Denning. And these books take place about 40 years, more or less, from the end of the original 6 Star Wars movies. In order of publication and in order of timeline, they are Betrayal, Bloodlines, Tempest, Exile, Sacrifice, Inferno, Fury, Revelation by Karen Travis, this book being the one that I consider to be the best of that series, and finally, Invincible. Now, Disney is so concerned about creating a politically correct Star Wars that they wouldn't even use these books. And these books have a timeline that ends, eventually, with a woman becoming, quote-unquote, Queen of the Jedi. And while the books are going on, they have another woman, yes, another woman, who is, quote-unquote, the Sword of the Jedi, the best Jedi fighter of them all. And yet even that wasn't politically correct enough for Disney. People, that tells you where our culture is going. And it's not to a good place. It certainly isn't a good place for those of you women out there who want a quote-unquote real man. The neo-feminist crusade has created an atmosphere so toxic that there are two types of men being produced now, growing up from boys. They are what I like to refer to as girly men, or what I call raw thugs. The girly men are the ones that seem to know feminist dogma even more than most women do. They're straight, they're not gay, but they might as well be gay. Ladies, here's what they're doing. Those men are trying to do everything they can to get in your pants by acting like they don't want to get in your pants. But to the girly men, I have a message. Women despise wimps. It's not even so much about being as big as King Kong and everything. It's about having a willingness to step up and be a real man when it is time to fulfill your responsibilities. Now, if you're not willing to do that, or if you're willing to try and be the equivalent of your intended girlfriend, you ain't gonna make it, bruh. I'm just telling you. Because women dismiss you, and even if they accept you, they'll treat you like a doormat because that's how you're acting. Then, there are the raw thugs. A lot of times these are the guys that women gravitate to who are tired of the girly men. There's only one problem with the raw thugs. Raw thugs go completely the other way. They're the ones that, yeah, they'll show a woman a good time, and then they'll beat the snot out of her if she gets out of line. So ladies, if you want a nice, abusive, codependent relationship, head right for the tough guys now. The young tough guys. Because they have not been taught what it is to be a real man. It's not being a girly man, and it's not being a thug. It's in between. It's being willing to listen to your woman, and it's being willing to do for your woman. That's a man. That's a real man. And yes, I used the term, your woman. Because for a relationship between a real man and a woman to work, they must be partners. One must not hold domination over the other. They must work in sync with each other. That's why it annoys me no end to watch a Muslim couple walking down the street. Oh my God, Dave said he's offended by watching a Muslim couple walking down the street. Yeah, you know why I am? Because the woman is walking behind the man like a dog. That's disrespectful. In a good, loving relationship, the woman should walk beside the man and share things with him. The man has his job, the woman has hers, and when they can, they cooperate. And that's how long, sustained, loving, real relationships are carried through. As I said, I don't think that this effort to really dehumanize men in the United States of America is some kind of a big conspiracy, but I just gave you one consequence of it. And here's the other. This was quoted by one of the greatest generals ever in the United States military. This was by Major General Chesty Puller of the United States Marine Corps while on a battalion inspection. He said, "Our country won't go on forever if we stay soft as we are now. There won't be any America because some foreign soldiery will invade us and take our women and breed a hardier race." You see, ladies and gentlemen, there is one group of men who are not succumbing to the new wave of feminism in the United States of America, and that is Mohammedans. Time and again on my program, I've talked about how abuse of women is common in Islam. And you may find yourselves, ladies, who are adamant about the Me Too movement and only applying it in one place, being in a very bad position a few years from now, because you will have created American men who will be unacceptable, and the only others that you will be able to turn to will be practitioners of an ideology that considers you little better than property. The positive future of the United States of America is when men and women are equally valued and equally respected. For the ladies who are hearing this and who would like to see me fired from a cannon, I just want to put this addendum. Living a life constantly reminding yourselves and everyone else who will listen of abuses that you've suffered is not a path to happiness. As I've said, I will never ever tell you to get over it, because you can't. I understand that. But there's more to life than any abuse you may have suffered. I lived for a few years resenting sighted people because of abuses that I've suffered from them. It's a dark, lonely, unhappy existence. And there's more to life. I encourage you to embrace that more, to embrace that completeness, to embrace that totality that life is. Get right with God, and use those experiences to make you a stronger person and to help others. And find joy in life. Because I'll tell you that if you don't, and if you live to constantly trumpet your victimhood, then that person or those people in life who abused you are living rent-free inside your head. They win and you lose. I was raised to have respect for women, and I don't consider them losers. Ladies, the progressive left and Democrats consider you to be a loser. A tool. A resource. To be used by them and then thrown away at their convenience. To you, and to everyone listening, I say that in the 2018 midterms, vote for a party and for people who are prepared to defend your real power through self-rule and economic opportunity, instead of a party that will give you shackles disguised as validation. Vote Republican and vote red. And let's all win. Together. And that is it for this time. For those of you who have listened to both parts of this special, I want to especially thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. Go forward with mutual respect. And may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2018. Anno Domini. Now for Dave's Canes. Extras that help you navigate the new media world.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny, on shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday, live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
I'm Dave Milner. I bring 50 years of news analysis experience to you weekly through SHR Media, High Plains Pundit Talk Radio, and the Western Free Radio Network on the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's English Defense League Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant, like the truth that Arizona Senator John McCain is still dead, and yes, as a senator, he did suck.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday, from 7 to 9 a.m., right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
Hey, who's going to take Sean's chair?
I'll run the buttons if you want.
The what?
The slider
the
thingies. Those
what?
Things.
We have those?
Yeah, right over there.
Where?
It's on the board. Damn technology.
Fucking technology.
I know. What are we going to call it?
Call what?
The show.
What?
The show.
What show?
The new show, Wednesdays. Every Wednesday on shrmedia.com. 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Sackheads.
Against tyranny.
There you go.
Against tyranny.
I like that. Let's do it.
You guys are porked. Hello, I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.